Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Path to Bitcoin. And today I am going over I can't remember how many times I've done this on the podcast so far, but I need to do it again because I think I'm getting better at distilling the amount of information that I have to convey in order to express why I think Bitcoin is going to win. And that comes down to, I say it all the time, that the hardest thing for people to understand when they come to the world of Bitcoin is what money is, because they have no idea. It hasn't been explained to them in traditional education. And why should it be? It just sort of has worked. That's the world that you have lived in for your entire life, has operated on a money that you didn't need to understand because it just sort of worked. And it didn't really get in the way that much, or at least you didn't know how much it got in the way. So that's what I'm going to do right now. Okay, let's start off with what is money. Money is two things. Money represents stored or accessible energy. That is what it represents, stored or accessible energy. So if you have money, you have access. We have a call option on access to energy. And energy is in the form of other things, right? That's why money is the apex optionality for energy. You can turn $10 into your pocket. From that $10 bill, you can turn it into anything that you possibly want, right? People will exchange whatever for that $10, right? It is the most liquid good in society, but money is a call option on accessible energy. So money is energy, or a representation of energy. Money is also a tool, right? And tools solve problems. And what is the problem that money solves then? If it exists and it is a tool, it has to solve a problem. What is that problem? Well, if we understand that all human action is based upon our desire to survive, and in order to survive, we need access to energy reserves. The more reserves we have access to, the higher likelihood we are able to survive in an unpredictable world going forward, right? No matter what the future holds for us, the more access we have to energy reserves, the higher the likelihood that we are to survive. And survival is the number one thing, the number one why behind human action. Right? And you can think about that in like your Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? You take away oxygen out of a room, nothing else matters except getting that oxygen, right? Survival is at the top. So in order to survive, we have realized that, well, the more energy reserves, the better chance we have of survival. And all of our predecessors have had enough energy reserves, enough energy in reserve to be able to be called upon whenever needed to survive. That's how we've come into existence in the first place. So we are descendants of individuals who understood this very fact. So if that is the case, then all human action at the base layer is undertaken so that we can have access to more energy reserves than what we started with. Well, then you have to think back to your high school physics class and remember that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It has to be transformed. And human beings, we are the species in the world that is swimming against the river of entropy. Right? We go around trying to lower the entropy in the world around us by storing energy in the most dense form possible. Right? The less amount of room that it takes up, the better. The less amount of space that takes up, the better. We're trying to compact and condense everything down to be as dense as possible with energy reserves. And again, if the main goal of all human action is to acquire control over as many energy reserves as we can possibly control, well, then we have to look at what the problem is that money is solving. Somebody smart, a long time ago, realized that we could actually unlock more energy through cooperation, through specialization, and through the division of labor. If we cooperated and exchanged goods and services, we could actually unlock more energy together than we could by ourselves. Okay, and that works up until a certain point where you hit a threshold where you are so good at unlocking a particular kind of energy through a particular kind of work that you are no longer able to self-sufficiently provide all of your other energy needs or to meet all of your other energy needs. So then you become reliant on that exchange with other people to ensure your survival. And that is the stage that we're at now. Just think about how much energy it would take if you had to look after all of your needs for day-to-day survival. It would make you incredibly inefficient at other things or even at your job. You wouldn't be able to unlock as much energy as before because all of your energy would be pointed towards survival, taking care of the things that you actually need to survive on a day-to-day basis. And you have to remember that the only way that human beings are able to gain control over energy reserves is by unlocking them, right? Energy can't be created or destroyed. It has to be transformed from one state to another. And the important transformation for our conversation here, or for the understanding of Bitcoin, is you have to transform energy from an inaccessible state to an accessible state, one that you didn't have control over, and then you do have control over it. So I like to use the terms locked and unlocked. So we are unlocking energy so that we can then have control over it and we can channel it to whatever means we see fit. That is what we are trying to do. And every time that we are doing work, we're doing work to create energy reserves or to unlock energy reserves. And once we have control over our energy reserves, energy begets more energy. The more energy that we can control, the more energy we can transform or unlock from inaccessible to accessible, the more energy we can have in the future, right? It compounds. The effect is compounding. The easiest way to understand this is think about like a simple fishing example, right? Say with a fishing, you have to survive. You're on a deserted island. You have a fishing pole with you, right? You can catch 2 fish every day. You only need 1 fish to survive, but you can catch 2 in a single day. So you work for a couple of days. You build up a small pool of extra reserves of fish. At the end of the week, you have 7 more fish than you needed to survive. And let's say that those fish, you didn't have to worry about them rotting or going bad. That means for the next week, you wouldn't have to work because you have a buildup of reserves. Well, let's say you take that time in that week that you've built up the reserves from catching fish for the first 7 days, and you come up with a better way, a more efficient way to fish or to harvest or to unlock energy. That's what you're doing with the fish, right? The fish is the caloric energy that we need to run our bodies. So the more reserves that we can build up, then we are able to deal with any uncertainty in the future. Maybe there's days where we can't actually go out and get the fish. So we need reserves in order to survive. So say after a week of catching 2 fish a day, when you only need 1 fish to survive, at the end you have 7 more than you need. That gives you a week of reserves. Let's say in that week's time, instead of going out and fishing every day and building up more reserves, say you use your mind to come up with a more efficient way to catch fish, right? It's to create a net. And that net now allows you to catch 10 fish in a day. Well, now you have unlocked the energy that was previously required to catch fish with the pole. You used to have to sit there for a whole day to catch 2. Now you can catch 10 in a day. Well, that is unlocking energy that was previously required for another task. And now the question is, what are we going to do with that energy? Where do we put that? The more energy we unlock, the more energy we can access in the future. And that's the important point here. So what does money do as a tool? What is the problem that money is solving? Well, the problem that it's solving is, like we were talking about before, how through the division of labor and specialization and cooperation and exchange with one another, somebody smart a long time ago realized that we could actually get significantly more control over energy, unlock more energy and have more energy reserves if we exchange with one another, if we specialized, if we divided up the labor. We could unlock more energy than we could all by ourselves. The problem becomes, as we specialize more and more and more, we can no longer satisfy all of our energy needs on a daily basis by ourselves. So now we are dependent on exchange. We need the exchange in order to survive. We need the energy to keep flowing around the system, or else we're not going to have enough to survive on an individual basis. So what money does is money is there to facilitate exchange. It's to facilitate the movement of energy. It's there to facilitate the allocation of energy to the area where it's needed the most and where it can be most beneficial to the most amount of people. Because you have to remember that exchange is always, in a free market, is always positive sum, right? Both parties come out better. The only reason that exchange happens in the first place is because it unlocks more energy. If either side came out with less energy than they went in with, then rationally they wouldn't conduct that exchange. They would not participate. Because again, the whole goal of every human action is to gain control over more energy than was previously held. So if we know that individuals want to control as much energy as possible, money represents stored or accessible energy, or a call option on that energy in the world. And money is a tool that is there to facilitate as much exchange as possible, to get energy flowing as much as possible in the right areas, to the productive areas of society. And what's a productive area of society? Well, the production is of unlocking energy, right? If a sector or a company can unlock more energy than another company, well, then it is more productive, right? It is better for society if it's unlocking more energy while at the same time using less, expending less energy than it takes, than it allows for the creation of, or the transformation of energy at the end. And now I'm not going to go into all of the characteristics of what makes a good money. If you've listened to the show enough, you probably know. You've probably heard the categories for what makes a good money. Basically, if you don't know those things, Bitcoin fulfills the majority of those categories better than anything that the world has ever known before. But Bitcoin also allows for things that other monies have never allowed for since the invention of money, since the discovery of money, and just how beneficial it can be to society. And one of those is the hard cap of 21 million units, right? The discovery of absolute scarcity and what that means and what Bitcoin represents. If money is a representation of stored or accessible energy, money is also a tool. What does Bitcoin represent? What does the 21 million units of Bitcoin represent? And this is where the Tasso idea comes in, which is the total accessible supply of energy. The 21 million units of Bitcoin and the hard cap on that, the idea that there will never be more created, allows for the first economic constant that the world has ever had. And the 21 million units represents all of the energy in the system. We know that through exchange, we can unlock more energy than if we don't exchange. And if we cooperate, and if we divide up labor, more and more energy can be unlocked. So the amount of energy that all of society has access to will continue to increase. The more we develop technology, the more we develop tools, right? The whole point of tools is to do something more efficiently, to do more with less. And as that continues to happen again and again and again, human beings are going to have access to and control more energy than they did before. That is the story of human evolution. That is why we have better lives than the kings of the 18th century, is because why the common person has a better life than the kings of the 18th century is because we control more energy. we have transformed and unlocked more energy than was possible before. So the total 21 million units of Bitcoin represents the total accessible supply of energy inside of the network at any given time. And then what does that mean for an individual who decides to store their energy in Bitcoin? What is actually happening? Let's take a look at the transaction and why it's important to understand what is going on under the hood when you decide to store your unlocked energy that you don't need for immediate consumption in Bitcoin. What is actually happening? Well, there's only one way to get Bitcoin, right? That's to exchange energy, unlocked energy in the real world, in the physical world, and plug it into the Bitcoin network, right? That's the only way you make more. That is how the act of mining is plugging energy into the Bitcoin network. And you get a reward of creating new Bitcoin in that process, right? Up until the 21 million hard cap. So energy must go into the system. So now if you are a miner and you have pumped energy into the system, there is a value on that energy. And you're not going to exchange that Bitcoin for less energy than what you put in. Okay, so let's say that you unlock a certain amount of energy. Let's say you unlock $1,000 worth of energy in the physical world through whatever work that you do. You've unlocked $1,000 of energy. Now that will buy you a certain percentage of the Tasso. Let's say it buys you one Bitcoin, right? This is back when Bitcoin's super cheap, just so the numbers are real easy for us. $1,000, you get one Bitcoin. So now you own 1/21 millionth of the total accessible supply of energy inside of the network. Now, that energy goes to the person. If you go to the market and say, I have energy that I am not going to immediately consume, but I also can't use the energy to unlock any more energy, or I don't want to do it, right? And the way that you would do this, if you think about it, is you would reinvest in a tool that would help you do your job better, right? If you're a ditch digger, you might have a shovel and that allows you to dig a certain number of ditches every single day, or you could get some giant excavator, right? So you could invest in the business to allow yourself to get a tool which would make you more efficient in unlocking energy, because now you can dig, 100 holes in a day versus just 10. So you could do that, but you decided you didn't want to. You go to the marketplace and say, I have energy. Is there anyone in the entire world, right? Because Bitcoin is open source, permissionless, anyone can join the network and participate. Anyone across the world that has a need for energy that is using the Bitcoin network, they can say, yes, I'll exchange my percentage of the Tasso with your energy. So you give them the energy, they give you a fixed percentage of the Tasso. Now, here's the beautiful part. This is where the incentives align to the hive mind of human beings. That person who takes the energy out of the system, right? You've plugged it into the system, they've taken it out of the system. There's two things that they can do. They can either unlock more energy with it, or they can give it to someone else who has unlocked more energy, right? So they can waste it. Say they purchase something that doesn't allow them to unlock more energy. Say they get a yacht, and the yacht doesn't allow them to unlock any more energy. But they gave the money to the person that built the yacht, and they built the yacht and exchanged the energy for the yacht because they were able to do so through specialization and division of labor. They were able to come up with a system and make a profit, a margin on that transaction, right? They were able to build the yacht for less energy than they exchanged it for. Now that person has excess energy, and maybe they are not going to immediately consume it, and they need a place to put it. Well, every time an exchange happens and energy is unlocked, energy is taken from an inaccessible state to an accessible one, it now has to live somewhere. And let's say the owner of that yacht company has this excess energy, they need a place to store it because they're not going to be able to immediately consume it. So they go to the marketplace, the entire global world marketplace of Bitcoin, and say, does anybody in the world need energy? Does anybody need energy because they think that they can go out and unlock more with it? Because that is the only reason you would exchange Tasso or a certain percentage of Tasso for energy, is because you think you could go out and unlock more with it. So you are incentivized. That's why you're rewarded as a hodler, right? You put energy into the system and then you choose not to consume it. You are making it available for anyone in the world to unlock more energy. And this is exactly the way that you would want it to work, which is why you feel like you're part of something when you are part of the Bitcoin network. You store your energy there, you delay consumption of that energy, and you make it available to anyone in the world that thinks that they can go out and unlock more energy using your energy, using the energy that you unlocked through your work. And the longer that you make that energy available to individuals, the more rewarded you are. Because through exchange, through the division of labor, through specialization, through the advancement in technologies and techniques and tools, we get better and better at controlling more and more energy, unlocking more energy, transforming it from inaccessible to accessible. And once it's accessible to us, then energy begets more energy, right? We can use it. The more reserves we have, the further out in advance we can plan. And this is the beautiful thing about the incentive model for Bitcoin. As a hodler, if you put your energy into the system, you are incentivized to delay consumption as long as possible. Because the people that are taking that energy out of the system and into the real world to actually use it, the ones that are the most effective with allocating energy in the real world, i.e. the ones that are able to transform or unlock energy in the real world, using the energy that you have provided them through the Bitcoin network, they build up more and more and more energy reserves that need to be stored somewhere. They're going to pump it back into the network. So your percentage, your fixed percentage stays the same. Again, let's say you own 1% of the Bitcoin network. As more and more energy gets pumped into the system, your 1% stays the same over that ownership, but the entire pie increases larger and larger and larger, but you still own that fixed percentage. So your reward for delaying consumption is a piece of the entire world's or the entire network's ability to unlock more energy. And the people that take energy out of the system and squander it, they are punished. Because now, if they take energy out of the Bitcoin network and they go to use it, right, they exchange their Bitcoin for energy, they go into the real world and they squander it on a yacht, which doesn't allow them to unlock more energy, right? They're handing the keys over to an individual that did produce value, that did unlock energy through that yacht building. The person that bought the yacht did not. They're just exchanging it. Now, they can't buy in. Say they want to control more energy again. They want to buy back in to the Bitcoin system. Well, they will not have the same amount of energy reserves that they previously did. They won't have more than they took from the system. They'll have less, which means they'll be able to control less of the tasso. And the more they make decisions that end up with them having less energy reserves at the end of whatever action that is, the more detrimental it's going to be to their control over the system, to their control over energy. And the more positive decisions that you make that end up with more energy reserves at the end of whatever activity it is that you're doing, the more you are rewarded. And this is exactly what the hive mind of humanity needs in order to accelerate growth into the future. We want the best and the brightest, the people that unlock the most amount of energy. We want those people in charge of the energy. We want them allocating the energy because they have proven that they have the ability to allocate energy wisely. And once you understand this concept and you realize that the Bitcoin network is open and permissionless and anyone can join that is able to gain access to the network, it's so simple and easy to do. You don't have to sign up with anyone. There's no centralized party that you have to consult with before you actually join up. Anyone can do it, no matter what level of the financial hierarchy you are on. Any improvement in efficiency in any activity leads to tasso growing larger, right? Leads to the unlocking of more energy. And when you are deciding to store the energy that you have unlocked in the physical world in Bitcoin, now we are, every time someone finds a way to become more efficient, someone finds a way to do any activity better, i.e. to do more with less, you win. That's why when you own Bitcoin, you are rooting for humanity to continue on the path that it has been on for the last 10,000 years, which is continue to control, to find ways to unlock more and more and more and more energy through tools, through technology, through information exchange. The better we can get, the more efficient that we become, the total accessible supply of energy grows inside of the network that is humanity. And while it is complex at first to try and understand all the moving pieces that are in Bitcoin, there's a million different ways to explain it. No one will ever truly understand what Bitcoin is or what it means or what it represents. The rabbit hole continues to go deeper and deeper and deeper. It's really easy early on to ignore this idea of energy because it's a different way of thinking about money. It's a different way of thinking about the world and the exchanges that take place in the economy. But that's all it is, right? We are just trying to gain control over as much energy as possible because that ensures that we are able to survive another day. And survival is the base foundation of all human action. The more energy reserves, the more we can plan for the future, the more we are able to deal with the unpredictable nature of this universe. And the more we can ensure survival, the better it gets. And energy begets energy. The more energy we unlock, the higher the potential that we can unlock even more energy because we have more time to think through the problems that we have in unlocking energy in the current state. What can we do to be more efficient? Where can we shave off things that are not as efficient as they could be? What's a tool that we could come up with? That's technology that we could use or leverage to get better. So when you invest in Bitcoin, when you decide to store your energy in Bitcoin, not only can it not be diluted, not only can it not go away, can it not be, is there no third party that can print more of it or dilute your share of it? Not even speaking to that, just the idea that if anyone in the world is able to find an efficiency in any activity, doesn't matter what it is, you're going to benefit when they plug that energy into Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin is the best way to store energy, the more and more people that realize this, that there's no bleed, that it will actually increase, right? The number go up technology will continue to work as it has for the last 12 years. The more people realize this, in comes the energy. More and more and more energy comes into the system. And as that more energy comes into the system, people are going to start to realize, well, maybe this is my number. I can take energy out of the system now because I have found an area where I can unlock more energy than I'm actually exiting the system with. And if that's the case, then I can come back and buy in even more ownership of the tasso. And if I can do that again and again and again, eventually I get access to more and more energy, not only through other people working in the real world to unlock energy, but myself through the fruits of my own labor. But you have to understand what the trade-off is. And at the moment, everything, there is nothing that you can do that is more efficient. Well, there's very few things, I should say, There's very few things that the average person can do that is more efficient than if the name of the game is unlocking energy reserves for yourself or controlling as much energy as you possibly can, having access to as much energy reserves as you can possibly have in order to ensure survival. The vast majority of people, the best thing you can do is make it available to other people. Make it available to anyone in the world. And that's where the entrepreneurs take over. There are people that will always risk taking energy out of the system to go and unlock more. And if they're successful, they win. They get a larger control of Tasso. But you also win, right? Because they've come back with more energy and they plugged it into the system. So you win and they win. If they lose alone, right? Because that energy gets dispersed to other individuals and they still plug it back into the network. So the more we can facilitate exchange, the better. And Bitcoin is the best form of money that has ever existed, which means it will facilitate more exchange because it removes impedance inside of the system, inside of the circulating. You have to think of it like a bloodstream, right? If there's clots in the system, it's not as efficient as it could be. If we remove those barriers to energy exchange, things are going to go quicker and quicker. It's only going to accelerate. The technology is going to get better. The tools are going to get better. The information is already better because there is no noise. There's no third party acting out, distorting any signals inside the prices. I mean, price is information, right? The exchanges, the individual transactions of Bitcoin, of energy in the system, that's the data. The price of Bitcoin, which is really the price of energy, that is the information. And then we can take that information and start to structure it and put it into patterns and realize things, and that becomes the knowledge. And then we take that knowledge and we apply it, and that is the intelligence. And that is the hive mind being created, where all of a sudden, if we're able to price everything in Bitcoin and understand that Bitcoin represents energy in the system, we can be very efficient at allocating energy inside of the entire system. We know where it can be most effective. We know where it can be most utilized and where it is being underutilized. Right? And then there's gaps. There's the arbitrage there that you can play in information. Okay, I know I can take energy from this area and I can unlock more with it over here. Well, let's do that. Let's do that because it benefits the entire system. Right? It's in everyone's best interest to allocate energy to where it is most effective. And that's exactly what the Bitcoin system is designed to do. And it's only through the hard cap of 21 million that this idea becomes possible. This is a new concept. And I think we're only going to see energy, the ability for human beings to unlock energy and to control more and more energy and to have it accessible at any time in any form. I think that's only going to get quicker and quicker and grow faster and faster and faster. And before you know it, the idea of owning a certain percentage of Tasso is going to be the norm. That's exactly what you want to do. You want as much ownership over the idea that human beings will continue to unlock more energy than they did in the past. I think that much is obvious. It's not going backwards. It's only going forwards. And the better technology that we can store our energy in, the better off we're going to be, because that ensures that we have energy reserves in the future in any accessible form that we need it to the largest possible market. And that's what Bitcoin does.